Hello, hello. I'm returning with a second look at the Minotaur because I wasn't fully satisfied with the first one, and now I've played it significantly more than I had earlier. And I felt like it's time to make another commentary for this, since there were a lot of things I didn't really touch upon in the last one. For example, the strength of the torpedoes on this ship. And I'll just saying hello to some people who recognize me. And in general, the map is domination, well, it's T10 matchmaking. There is another carrier in this game though, and of course I'm not the full AA spec I was in my AA test against 4 Hakuryus, but this ship of course has quite strong AA regardless. And a small change that I've made is that I've actually switched from AFT into manual AA, because the problem with the huge range is that you mostly rely on someone else to spot the planes at the huge range to actually get the most out of it. Whereas if you spot planes when they're already within 6 kilometers, for example, then you don't really gain anything out of the AFT besides, well, your second set gains a bit. But in general, like by the time you focus them, they're pretty much already within AA range. Now the Shimakaze was kind enough to smoke me up. I gave him a thank you, and of course he helped me out. In return, I'm helping him out by focusing down these torpedo bombers so that he can't get wrecked by them. And of course, the first thing I do is open up on a Kutuzov, and this of course is one of the reasons why I still don't recommend the range module and prefer the faster rate of fire module instead. It's of course, you see how much I have to lead. I literally have to zoom out to lead when I'm shooting this Kutuzov, and he's only 12.8 kilometers away, and you saw how much of hang time these shells have. So range is obviously completely pointless on this T10 Minotaur. That's something I agreed with in the earlier commentary, and that hasn't changed. It's all about the close range, or well, sub 13 kilometers fights in general. And here, because I'm facing people who might have watched the commentary or in general just know more about the ship than the guys earlier, you might see something surprising, and that is they are happily blind firing into the smoke where I'm shooting from. Now that's very significant because you see they already forced me to burn a heal, and they already did significant damage to me. And considering how squishy I am, any hit from any of these Montanas can be a citadel or just in general huge damage. I'm even moving in the smoke, but they're still just shooting into the smoke, and any hit is hugely dangerous to me. They're both of them. They're in the division, those two T10 Montanas, and they are both more than eager to shoot into the smoke and try to land some shells on me. Which is of course intelligent because, for example, a blind shot, it hit me, it's instantly a citadel. As I pointed out in the armor model of this ship has a huge citadel. So enemy players that are intelligent enough to just go for the blind shots, of course it's very easy to recognize when a Minotaur is in a smoke. First of all, you see only AP shells, and you see that ridiculous rate of fire. And of course, because of that ridiculous rate of fire, you kind of telegraph where exactly in the smoke you are. So when you get these players that are willing to go for that shot, it can be quite painful. In this case, well, they have blasted, I'm down to half HP and I've already used the heal. I can heal up more of this HP, but of course, like, I didn't even get to deal that much damage because they instantly angled away. I did deal 33k damage, which is okay, and I did shoot down some planes, but they punished me by wrecking me to half HP, so certainly something to keep in mind, that you have to angle and you have to keep moving in the smoke. You can't just be a sitting target, because if you do and you face an enemy like this, you will get wrecked extremely hard, because once again the smoke doesn't stop shells, it only makes you invisible. Now this Kagero is sailing in a straight line, which of course because he's fighting the Shimakaze, and this is the same Shimakaze that helped me earlier, so I'm more than happy to absolutely wreck this Kagero that was giving him trouble. Gearing, it was in front of me, has smoked up. There's a Kutuzov heading into that smoke as well. So I'm obviously going to slow down and smoke up myself while I heal up the damage I took earlier. Now, of course the torpedoes, you have 2x4 on both sides. These torpedoes are very strong. I did mention that they were strong, but I didn't get into more depth on them. They deal 16.6k damage each. You can launch 8 per side. They have 10 kilometers of range, and they go, I think, 62 knots, and they don't really have that long of a spotting range. I think the warning you get is something like 1.3 kilometers, so these are actually surprisingly tricky to dodge. So these are pretty much your go-to defense, or well, your tool against other people smoking up, and your go-to defense in case someone is trying to rush you in the smoke. These torpedoes are your tool. Sadly, of course, 116 points. If someone angles right at you, you're probably gonna hit one, maybe two, and that's usually not really enough to stop someone, especially if it's a battleship rushing you, which I will be able to show you quite soon. Anyway, seeing as I smoked up, of course, you saw I activated the Hydro to defend defend against Torps, and in general just retreated behind the island because I didn't want to get stuck there. The Kutuzov is going to die by Torps, so I don't bother shooting him at all. I just focus the Gearing now, who's retreating. He sees the Torps, of course, and he has to retreat from them, so I'm punishing the Gearing in the meanwhile. Kutuzov goes down to the Torps. As I said, they are he probably saw them far too late, which isn't surprising at all. And oh, the North Carolina hit that Gearing that was reversing from my Torps. So essentially the Torps got both of them killed, even if the Gearing didn't get hit by one, but he simply had to reverse and he couldn't just accelerate away, and that kind of wrecked him. Hindenburg, he turns in towards me, which is certainly not very nice. This is of course one of the huge weaknesses when someone decides to turn in. Because it's a Hindenburg, I mean, I get some hits, but you see how many bounces I'm accumulating here? I'm up to like 8 bounces. I've only gotten 5 penetration, 10 bounces, 2 shattered shells, and well, yeah, 14 of them ultimately, and 7 hits. So more than 2 times my penetrations are just non-damage dealing shells. So quickly spotted a DD, nailing him with a couple of shells while I retreat into cover. Now, first of all, I want to get into cover. I don't want to be in the open while I'm spotted. That's highly dangerous on the ship. And second of all, I'm retreating to see if I can maybe harass one of these battleships down here. As you can see, there's a Bismarck pushing this way. And of course, any sort of battleships are huge damage sources for you. But of course, a Bismarck in general can be quite scary if he decides to push in. I'm kind of close. Of course, hydro range of Bismarck is like, what, 5.8, 5.9. So if he decides to charge me, I have to be very careful that I'll be able to bail in case he does. Turns out he's turning away though instead of charging me, so I'll just smoke up. I started to see if I can deal some sort of damage to him in the meantime. Once again, he's angling, which is not fun. Okay, the Moskva is radaring, but the Bismarck guns are in general turned away. I'm still accelerating though, so I'm not a sitting target. So he can't just get those easy citadels on me. See, I went full speed, now I'm dropping my speed because the radar should run out. He only got that one volley off. Of course, it was pretty much, I think, only one shell hit, but it was of course a citadel, because once again, you are a Minotaur and everyone citadels you every time. Anyway, the radar ran out, so now I just retreat back to where my position, or reverse back to my position, and I just keep spamming shells at him. Of course, since he's angling, you can see that the huge damage numbers you saw when I'm getting at the broadside ship, well, they of course disappear, and your damage lacks, honestly, quite a bit. I mean, ultimately your damage isn't too bad, but compared to the shells you're shooting, the amount of bounces and shatters you're getting is pretty disheartening. It feels like you're not really doing much. You just get the occasional lucky penetration, and that's pretty much it. And of course, the further away he gets, the harder, and especially since he's turning left and right, it gets harder and harder to land consistent shells at him. He's only at 13.7 per 13.8 kilometer range, but because of the massive arcs on these guns, it becomes quite challenging to land any hits. Now, if you didn't notice, the Moskva turned this way, so I'm constantly keeping an eye out for the fact that the Moskva might at any time push out and radar. So that's why I'm very much ready to move out here. You see I'm going closer to the edge. I think he's going to try to rush me. The Moskva, of course, straight up counters me. Okay, there's the radar. Yep, and there's the Moskva. Launching my Torps, so he can't just charge out hard to the left. He might have Hydro active as well, or he might be expecting them. Regardless, by dumping those Torps there, I prevent him from being able to straight up rush broadside out and just wrecking me with his guns. And those were more zoning torpedoes than they were actually hitting torpedoes. I mean, of course, ideally you would want to hit them, but it was more important that he couldn't just rush out full broadside and delete me. So I'm just going to stay behind this island until his radar runs out, because once again, radar, huge threat. His radar ran out. There we go. And I'm gonna turn back in and I'm gonna smoke up and see if I can deal with this guy. Slowing down and radaring up. I got this broadside, but yeah, I cannot citadel him, as you can see. In fact, lots of shells are shattering, doing 0 damage. Even at this angle, I have to go first. And I'm down to 196 HP. He blindly shot into the smoke, down to 196 HP. Luckily, of course, I have the amazing Royal Navy heal, so I'm healed back up. I'm quickly healing back up to 10k, 12k. You can see how quickly it heals me up, and I'm back up to 15k, even though I was just down at 100 HP. I got quite lucky that he didn't land more shells, or maybe he got lucky. Honestly, I don't really know how hard it is to hit one of these, but at the range he's at, I think it's probably quite easy to hit a Minotaur in the smoke like that. Of course, I made a mistake. I shot too much broadside in the smoke, and that kind of hammers down the whole point of you have to make yourself a small target, even if you're in a smoke, because when people wise up, like these guys in this game are doing, that they realize that they can shoot you in the smoke, it becomes really, really painful. That Kurfürst, that was he's dead and he's spectating me, and found it pretty hilarious that I literally dropped to 156 HP before I healed back up to my current 15k. So I'm just going to pretend that was calculated, but there were no calculations involved. It was honestly just misplay of me of showing too much broadside in the smoke. And that's something you have to get used to, which is a bit jarring, because indeed you kind of angle in smokes because you want to make yourself a small target when the eventual torpedoes come, so you can go between the torpedoes with ease. You don't want to show full broadside for that reason. No one really bothers shooting at smoked up DDs because the chance of hitting is so small. On these Royal Navy cruisers, however, they are so big, they are so high above the water, they present such a big target, they have such a large citadel, and in general their smoke puffs are so small, since you only have 2 smoke puffs, that you don't really have a lot of room to maneuver in the smoke. So people are obviously learning and wising up to the fact that yes, even though the target is smoked up, they are by no means invincible. They can be punished, they can be defeated and beaten in the smoke. And this is what we're seeing in this game, and this is honestly surprisingly quick adaptation. I knew that people would adapt to the upcoming cruisers, I knew people would learn how to deal with them and so forth, but I'm honestly surprised at how quickly it's already happening. So any sort of worries that the ship would be overpowered, well, honestly I can't really have them, because if you think the ship is overpowered, all you need to do is play a Moskva or play a Des Moines, or hell, you can even play honestly a battleship and just bomb rush this dude. Of course, you're making use of these excellent torpedoes again. I'm gonna let this Montana push up a bit further before I start hammering on him. The torpedoes are more of a maybe if he happens to go, because if he decides to rush me or turns towards me, I'll have my torpedoes up soon anyway. They have a, what, 1 minute 20 second or something cooldown. So in an ideal world, this he instantly shoots into my smoke. No hesitation, no nothing, instantly shoots into my smoke, damages one of my turrets. Not gonna bother repairing it, just gonna let it repair itself. After all, this is why we have basics of survivability. It reduces that by 15%. I'm just gonna keep hammering him. He's giving a lot of broadside still, which is fantastic. That's because now I can actually deal some damage to him. He's starting to angle now though. And angling, as I've said earlier, is the nemesis. Oh god, I'm constantly moving in the smoke because this is kind of scary. Luckily no hits there, but you can see I have to adapt to these guys. You can't just not just sit still, and it's kind of tricky actually to keep moving back and forth, considering how small the smoke area you have to move in is actually. You have to constantly like keep aware of how little you can move back and forth at a time, because if you move too much, you glide out of your smoke and then you instantly die, because being spotted even for a second in a situation like this is painful. Now, of course, here we get to the point. I could single launch these torpedoes, but there's really no point. I want to shoot at that plane before I launch these torps. I'm just gonna go for a spread and hope I get as many hits as possible. Switching to this guy first. Need to get rid of one Montana first. Now, this North Carolina next to me, it would be nice if it would help me, like push up and help me a bit with this Montana, because my smoke is really about to run out. But the problem is the Montana next to me is reversing and fleeing. So instead of presenting a threat so that we could like double team this guy, I'm a threat from here, he's a threat. Yeah, see, this is the issue. I only land one torp. I only land one single torp, and that's 10k damage on a Montana. That's 10%. He doesn't even care. He just angles against me. And see, if the North Carolina was pushing up here, as soon as he angled, like angled against me like this, he would have gotten a perfect citadel volley on him. But he's only pushing up now, like after I've already died, which is a bit... Yeah, I'm a bit annoyed honestly at this NC. But still, I did 204k damage, and considering what I was facing, I think it was a fairly good result. The game soon progressed after this towards our loss, of course. I find it kind of funny, I'm talking to this enemy Montana who killed me, and he complimented this North Carolina that reversed, because he knew as well that if this North Carolina had pushed up, he would have died, so he complimented him because he found it funny that this guy ran away and basically just left me for the wolves. But this game ended soon after, of course, in a loss. I'm not even surprised these days. But simply wasn't enough to carry this game out after this. It was fairly close though, 970 to 1000. And you can see, even though this was a loss, you can see just how, come on, pop-up screen, you are so slow, this UI. Yeah, you can see credits, 630k credits. So you can certainly, considering it's probably because I did so much damage to DDs. And I ended up getting 1.9k base XP, even though our side lost, almost competing with their top scorers. So overall, quite good. But here we of course see some issues. Well, first of all, I tanked 71k damage, which is pretty nice for a ship with 43k, but you can tank a lot more than this in this ship, provided you get lucky enough. Here we see some frustrations though. Oh, 200 hits on this guy. Let's look at my overall hit. 576 hits, and only 279 are penetrations. I have 180 ricochets and over 100 non-pens. I shot more shells that did 0 damage than I did shells that did damage in this game. So, as I said, another take at the Minotaur. I'll leave it up to you guys to decide what you think.